Hey everyone, today we are reading chapter 23 of Paola Santiago and the River of Tears by Taylor K. Mejia. Chapter 23 starts on page 257. Okay, let's start. Page 257, 23, even bigger dragon lizard dogs. They made slow progress across the field to the palace, doing their best to move in absolute. Oops. Just kidding. We're not on chapter 23. You guys didn't even correct me. We're on chapter 24. Sorry. So chapter 24, the bloodthirsty stairs. And that starts on page 266. I'll give you guys a minute to find the right page. Did you find it okay? Perfect. So chapter 24 starts on page 266. The title of chapter 4 is The Bloodthirsty Stairs. You? Like you're surprised? You basically came here on my orders. Ondina rolled her eyes and casually flipped her hair like they were at a sleepover, disagreeing over which movie to watch. Ondina looked both more solid and more surreal here. Her skin glowed faintly, her eyes still poison green. Her hair and dress were somehow darker and drew Pao's eyes hypnotically. How had Pao ever thought this was just a girl? Sorry, who are you? Dante asked. Long story, Pao and Ondina said together. I've been hearing that a lot lately, Dante said under his breath. Pao ignored him and glared at Ondina, who was as unfazed as ever. Look, Pao told her. I don't know how you got in here, too, but you were right. Dante and I need to find our friend and figure out how to get out of here before the barrier closes. Dante stepped forward. Yeah, or before one of those psycho ghosts tries to strangle me again. Oh, they won't do that, Ondina said, glancing back at the bridge, where another 100 ahogados had begun to gather. Are you kidding me? Dante asked. That's like what they do. It's the only thing they do. They do what they're told, Ondina replied. Beckoning over her shoulder with her little finger, the mass of green-eyed ghosts began to move forward. What are you doing? Pao asked, a chill settling in her stomach. Ondina held up a hand. The procession stopped, all but three, who beelined for the kids huddled against the pillar. What are you doing? Pao repeated, every cell in her body ready to run to save them. But her limbs were heavy and slow. She couldn't take a step. Ondina didn't answer. Even Dante watched, his eyes strangely unfocused as the ahogados led the kids into yet another black hole. What's going to happen to them? Pao asked, her words as slow as her limbs. We're taking them to Hogwarts, Ondina said snottily. You said... Pao stuttered, Bruto barely stirring in her arms. You said you weren't one of them. You said you wanted to help me. I'm not one of them, Ondina said with disdain. As for the other thing, well, it shouldn't come as a huge shock to you that it was me. I was really trying to help. But don't worry, it won't be too bad for you. She grinned. And on another face, in another setting, it might have been one of those too cute beauty pageant smiles. Here, it was downright terrifying. How exactly do you two know each other? Dante asked, and Pao felt guilty. For a moment, she'd almost forgotten he was there. She looked at him, feeling her eyes do that I'm sorry thing before she even spoke. How could she tell Dante now about a little lifetime of dark, twisted dreams? Dreams that connected her to this girl and this place and all the evil they had been fighting since this started. How could she tell him it might be all her fault? As fun as it would be to watch you try to wriggle out of this one, Paola, said Ondina. We have an appointment. Let's go. A what? What are you talking about? Pao shook her head, a little trying to focus. Why was she so tired all of a sudden? I told you, we have to find Emma, and she actually yawned. We have to find Emma, and the only thing you're doing, Ondina interrupted, is exactly what I say. Just like every other living creature in this bubble. Ondina clapped twice, and something flickered in the eyes of the closet closest ancient chupacabra. He lowered his head. Climb on, she said to Pao and Dante, or I'll have to force you to do it at knife point. And that's just so boring, don't you think? Knife what? Pao knew there was something wrong, but she was so tired all of a sudden, and Dante was already hoisting himself up, stiff limb like he was sleepwalking. The sight of him turned robotic made Pao feel sharper, just for a moment. What's wrong with him? She asked. What's going on? Oh boy, back to the what questions, Ondina said, faking a yawn of her own. And here I thought our relationship had grown. Pao could only stand there. Nothing in her brain seemed to be working. I could knock you out first, Ondina said, but I'd be doing you a disservice. The view of the palace on the way in is really breathtaking this time of year. Now please, get on. She said this last part with such authority, it seemed to ring in the air. Like a general, Pao thought, or a lieutenant at least. Her eyes were so green. It would be so easy to just do what she said. No, Pao said, still trying to fight, to hold on. But to what? She couldn't remember. Pao climbed up the ancient chupacabra's scaly side one-handed, Bruto's head hanging strangely over her arm. Already on the back of the twin chupacabra next to her, Dante didn't look over. He was still staring at Ondina. Very good, she said, vaulting into the beast effortlessly to take a seat in front of Pao. She turned with a smirk. I have a feeling your friend's the obedient one. I need to keep a closer eye on. Now let's get on with it, shall we? She clapped again, and the beasts began to move. Ondina was right about one thing, Pao thought, her mind sluggish. The view crossing the bridge was really is beautiful. The palace doors opened with a wave of Ondina's hand. Inside, the green light wasn't as harsh, though everything glowed with it. In Pao's arms, Bruto slept with his tongue lolling out, and the warm weight of him made Pao even sleepier. Would it be so bad to nod off for just a little while, she wondered. She looked at the mount beside her to see that Dante's eyelids were closed. See, said a calming voice in her head, he's perfectly safe. The front hall was magnificent with glass walls, green veins running through them like circuitry. It made Pao think of the robotics kit she'd been trying to get her mom to spring for it and giggled. A robot castle? How ridiculous! Almost as ridiculous as riding through a robot castle on the back of a chupacabra dragon. A few days ago, Pao was pretty sure she'd been a girl who didn't believe in folktales or ghosts. She giggled again, feeling loopy and disoriented. The chupacabra halted at a sweeping glass staircase that disappeared up into the second level. Pao smiled when she pictured the creatures trying to go up the stairs, but she managed to keep her amusement to herself this time. Bruto snorted in her arms, opening his left eye just a crack. Beside her, Dante did the same. Time to disembark, Ondina said. Returning to the ground soundlessly once again, she waited as Pao maneuvered her clumsy, heavy legs over to one side of the chupacabra and slid down beside her. With Bruto in her arms, she landed awkwardly and he spilled onto the ground, yelping indignantly at the rude awakening. Sorry, Pao said, the words thick in her mouth like oatmeal that had been cooked too long. Leave it to you to bond with one of those things, Ondina said. You think you're so good and pure. I don't, Pao said, recalling her dreams and the way opening void of the rift had felt like home. Ondina didn't question her statement, and Pao didn't elaborate. The thoughts drifted away, replaced by relief when Dante joined them on the ground. She didn't know why, but Pao felt stronger when the two of them were together, and she leaned into his shoulder heavily, forgetting to be embarrassed. He leaned into her too. Adorable as you two lovebirds are, we have places to be, Ondina snapped, and Pao, despite her exhaustion, couldn't help but notice that the girl seemed different than she'd been outside. More nervous, like a kid during a test when the teacher stopped to look over their shoulder. When Ondina began climbing the stairs, Pao's confusion took a backseat to dread. Her legs were heavy as stone, and she could barely keep her eyes open. There were at least 100 stairs, more, if they continued past the point she could see, which with her luck they probably did. Emma, Pao said, a cold feeling starting to creep into her sleepy haze. I have to get Emma. Sure, Ondina said, her voice razor-edged. Now get moving. If Pao had thought she was tired before, it was nothing compared to how she felt when they reached the halfway point of the stairs. Bruto, whose energy seemed affected by their surroundings ever since he woke up, nudged worriedly at Pao's ankles when she slowed, but he couldn't help her. The places on her body that had been burned before, when the key had drained her, now ached, making her want to curl up on the floor right then and there. She stumbled, almost losing her footing. Bruto licked her hand. "I know," she mumbled, feeling worse than she ever had. Her mom woke her up from school. "Keep going." She kept climbing. Another flight, another, then another. Eventually, at the edges of her fuzzy vision, Pao noticed the weight of her foot caused each step to glow brighter as she trod on it. Or was that just delirium setting in? It hadn't been that long since she'd slept, had it? Sure, she'd done some fighting, and there'd been that whole traveling through a dark portal between worlds thing, and the key turning her hair white thing twice, but still her exhaustion couldn't be explained, even by everything she'd gone through in the past 24 hours. She felt like her bones were being leached out of their nutrients, making them brittle and achy, like her brain's synapses were growing dimmer until it was a struggle to remember who she was or why she was climbing. Bruto nipped at her sneaker heel. She climbed anyway. 50 steps, 100. There was no doubt about it now. Her swimming eyes caught the change in the light when her feet hit the stairs. But what did it mean? What was happening? Pao knew, as if it were a distant historical fact, that she was an inquisitive person, clever even, and that this was certainly a mystery. But she couldn't make her brain puzzle it out. Right now, the only thing she cared to know was when she'd be allowed to lie down. Dante groaned beside her, his eyes half closed. She wanted to say something to him, but she forgot what it was before she started to speak. There was nothing but the next step, and the next. "Not much farther now," Andina said, not seeming tired in the least. "Emma," Pao thought, and she said it aloud unconsciously. "Emma?" Ugh. Has anyone ever told you a one-track mind doesn't make you a very pleasant traveling companion? The question didn't seem to require an answer, but Pao, even surrounded by glowing green, barely able to drag one foot past the other, felt like she had indeed been told that many times in her life. She just couldn't remember why or by whom. The second floor's main feature was a massive chandelier hanging in the very center of a large circular landing. 17 more stairs to go, Pao guessed, closing one eye to see through the haze of exhaustion. 16, 15. But she stopped counting at the point because waiting for them at the top of the stairs were 3 tall skeletal figures with massive black feathered wings sprouting out of their backs and faces twisted in expressions of perpetual pain. "What's this?" Pao asked. "I thought, Emma..." Apparently, talking and walking at once was too much for her overtaxed coordination because Pao slipped on step 14, or was it 13, and caught herself with both palms on the sharp edge of a glass stair. She could feel the warmth of blood on her hand, and she looked down to find deep cuts in her skin, but there was no red stain on the stair. The creatures at the top screeched hungrily, but Andina silenced them with a wave of her hand, waving for Pao to stand. A drop of her blood fell, and she watched it as if in slow motion. The tiny bead splashed up at the sides when it landed, but it disappeared before it could pull. The glass had absorbed it. "It's draining you," said a part of her subconsciousness that was apparently still thinking clearly, just like the ahogados, just like the key. But why? More of her blood dripped to the floor. The light under the stair went off like fireworks, nearly blinding Pao. Her eyes filled with tears. She didn't understand, and she always understood. "Dante will catch me," she thought as she swayed on her feet. But he didn't. When she fell, there was no cushion, only hard glass. She felt it. She heard Bruto yelp, and then there was nothing at all.